Hey everybody, welcome back to Top Ends with Twins. Today we're going to discuss the new assistant manager chip and try to decide where the table is going to be 5 fixtures down the line for your FPL assets. Let's do it.
Hey there, everyone. This is Luke here with Top Ends with Twins. I am sitting right next to Paul. We are excited to be back with you all for another episode here. Paul, you want to say hi to everyone?
Hello.
Well, thanks, Paul.
Sorry. My brain's a little gone today, but
Why
thanks
is
for
it
joining us, everybody. Go ahead.
Is it gone because Jose Mourinho might be making a return to the Premier League?
Yeah, game's gone. No, but Jose coming back would be that's the flavor the Premier League needs this season.
I want a video, and the assumption here is if he were to go back, it would be for Wolves replacing Gary O'Neill. I want to see the video of him just sitting there howling like a wolf. I guarantee that will pop up somewhere, but whenever it does, I'll be excited to see it.
Yeah, it's if Jose comes back, that would be just another added element to this already chaotic Premier League season that I think that's maybe the most chaotic thing that could happen in this Premier League season is just to throw him back into the fold somehow. So here's to kind of hoping that happens, but also not, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, Luke.
Just think about all the shade that he's going to be throwing at Pep when he's in the same league as him again. And City are struggling at the moment, so I can only imagine where that would go itself. But let's get back to FPL. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment. The fixtures are coming thick and fast. We have a new mystery chip that was revealed earlier today that we're going to talk about to start out the podcast. And then we're going to dive into how many points we expect each Premier League team to get over the next 5 fixtures and kind of talk about how we think we can invest based upon that premise. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to you, Paul, and tell everyone how your game week went last week for Game Week 15.
So on Game Week 15, I ended up on 53 points. So that's 3 points above the average of 50. It's not great.
That's a gray arrow essentially, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment. It's a gray arrow. Basically, let's just put it this way. I had one return in my team besides Cole Palmer. So I had a Kai Havertz assist on that header. And then besides that, the rest of my points came from Kai Havertz and just the minimal run-of-the-mill 1-pointers that are all the way across the board. I had a couple 2-pointers too, which, thanks for that, guys.
Hey,
really
big time points
it.
there, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess 2 is double 1, But
good math there.
I don't know, just disappointing for me though, because I have like Lucas Digne, who is starting for me. He subs on, has 31 minutes. Villa keep a clean sheet. He doesn't register that. I have Verbruggen in the back. They give up 2 goals to Leicester in the last 10 minutes of the match. I knew that with Brighton, but I kind of thought things would turn for them, and they had a good run of fixtures. So my wild card it's played out well. I have had probably 4 green arrows. I'm sitting. Let's see, where's my overall rank right now? So I'm sitting at 723K right now, which
that's good.
It is really good, but I was down to 634 in Game Week 13, and I'm kind of climbing back in the wrong direction now after 2 red arrows.
Right.
So really want to get it right this week and kind of right the ship,
Yeah.
But let's hear about your week because it's a lot more fun than mine.
What it sounds like to me, Paul, is you're just looking for a bit more consistency across the board. And what team does that remind you of? Arsenal, but also a lot of teams, honestly. I was going to make a joke about Tottenham Hotspur, but onwards we go. My game week for Game Week 15, I ended up on 52 total points. And fun fact about my team, I ended up with 52 points, but I had 1 player return in the entire week. So Cole Palmer, thank you for your massive haul there. You get me a very, very slight green arrow of about 7,000. It's a green arrow, so I'll take it. I'll run with it. But across my team, incredibly disappointed with how everyone performed this week. But, regardless, I really like the way my team's set up going forward, so I'm happy with them. Looking to make some changes over the next couple game weeks, though, because I think there's some some diamonds in the rough out there that aren't really being talked about as much as they should be.
Okay.
And if you want to know, reach out to me personally because I'm not going to divulge them on this pod. Actually, I'll probably talk about them at some point, but I won't specifically highlight them as who I'm thinking for bringing in or not.
Shoot a DM to Top Bento Twins on Twitter
or Blue Sky.
Or reach out on Blue Sky too. We have both those platforms are highly active. So
yes, another note though that really kind of frustrated me from this week, and this was the point that really got me, is Arsenal losing their clean sheet to Fulham. They conceded an XG of 0.2 the entire match and still managed
give up one chance
to lose the clean sheet. And that was extremely frustrating because I'm doubled up on Arsenal's defense. I have Timber and I have Raya. It's just frustrating when you have that happen.
So Luke, to add to that real quick, I think it just really shows, and I know I talk about Arsenal way too much on this podcast, but it shows how much the center backs are actually valued in Arteta's system right now. Because, I mean, you have Gabriel out and you have Kivior in, who is a good backup center back in the Premier League, I would say. I think he is adequate level. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then he just gets wrong-sided by Jimenez, gets basically done. You give Jimenez one shot, goal.
Yeah, and you would think Raya could
drop points.
Raya could do a bit better with that chance.
I don't know. I don't really like to ask questions of Raya because he's been so good to start the year, you know? Like, I'm not saying we shouldn't ask questions about if he should have saved that or not, but he saved Arsenal so many times that, like, if he has one, and that's not even really a fuck up, you know? Like,
yeah, I hear you on that. It's one of those, because he's such a good keeper, that's why I say it in the first place, because over the course of the match, he had an XG on target of 0.44, and usually Raya is going to save that. You know, it's just it's kind of what you expect of him because of the level that he's at, and that's the only reason why I say I was a bit disappointed because he is such a good keeper.
He is absolutely world class.
He is. He's such a good shot stopper.
He's really proved that this year. But yeah, look, I think overall, maybe a little disappointing weeks for both of us, but still not the week that kind of like puts you really far back in the season. It's just kind of more of a nothing week, you know?
Yes. Yeah, agreed. A lot of gray arrows across the board. Cole Palmer saved the week for a lot of people, I think, especially if you put the captaincy on him. Mm-hmm. But one quick note I do want to make. Going forward into Game Week 16, I kind of have a rarity in my team. Every single one of my players is playing at home, and
I like that.
The fixtures look absolutely incredible. My team is playing, so across the players I have, playing Everton at home, Leicester at home, Brentford at home, Fulham at home, West Ham at home, Ipswich at home, and Crystal Palace at home. All of those, I feel like captaincy this week is going to be such a difficult call. And we could, you want to talk about that right now, Paul? What do you, in your mind, what do you think captaincy looks like going into Game Week 16?
I do think that, sorry, real quick. Sorry, I'm having tummy issues today. Had to take a moment there, but I'm being brave, everybody, just so you know. Anyways, captaincy this week, I think there's a lot of different routes you can go, but I do think for me there's one clear choice, and that's Cole Palmer.
Okay.
Just the way he's been playing lately. They play a Brentford team that just love to concede goals. Like, this one could be 7-6. Like the way both these teams score, and it's gonna like they both play chaotic matches. I don't love Liverpool's matchup against Fulham at home. Fulham have shown they can play on the road. They should have beat City earlier. I know City aren't what they used to be, but Fulham will show up on the road, and I think they're the kind of team that could really pose issues for Liverpool. And Liverpool were not great on the midweek either in Champions League, so I don't think it's a lot this week, really.
Here's the thing about Liverpool, though, is they are consistently finding ways to win matches. And them drawing last week, well, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, was a big outlier because it seems like they're just ticking away at the points. It's impressive, but it also does make you think for a second about, okay, well, maybe they can't continue this streak that they've been on, right? Because they have had a fair amount of luck to go with their really, really exquisite form. Something to keep in mind. I agree. I think Palmer is a great pick for lots of different reasons. Chelsea look really good. I think they're their feet underneath them, and they're playing very progressive. Palmer's at the heart of everything they do, and Brentford away from home have been abysmal, especially conceding chances. So
Yeah.
that's where I'm leaning as well. I think Saka is an interesting pick. Everton at home.
Everton have been giving up goals lately too.
And today, earlier in UCL, Saka got 2 goals and an assist. He's at the heart of everything that Arsenal are doing, just as he always is. Saka's not a bad pick this week either, I think.
I agree with you.
And he would have had a goal last week if Gabriel Martinelli was just a bit more meticulous about being aware of his surroundings. That's all he had to do, right? And I don't want to pile on to everything because he's getting a lot of flack right now, but it is still frustrating because in his position where he is, he can see the entire back line. There's no reason for him to be caught offsides there. It's just, I can see why Arsenal fans are so frustrated right now.
Yeah, and I mean, what it simply comes down to is the margins are so fucking thin. I mean, you have a year where Arsenal have basically thrown away the first half of their season, essentially for stupid red cards, for part of it's injuries, part of it is just not being clinical enough. And then you have an instance where you can get 3 really good points on the road at Craven Cottage against Fulham, who's a very strong team this year, and you somehow almost manage to get 3 points at the end of that, and then you don't get it because Martinelli can't hold his line against a back line that he can see the whole line, like exactly like you said. And it's just the margins. It's really just the margins. Like Arsenal are doing nothing this year to like really set themselves apart. And if they don't win the title, it's honestly on them too. Like it really is. I mean, the title was there for the taking this year.
Yeah,
there's no question about it.
It still is, right?
Yeah,
I think that's the thing is it is mid-December right now. There's so much time left in the season that crowning Liverpool as the champions now because they are currently 4 points up with a game in hand. That seems premature to me, right? Because let's say that Liverpool at home this week, Fulham go in, they shock them, they get 3 points, or Liverpool drop all 3 points. Chelsea could end up the weekend being 1 point away from them.
Yeah.
And then the complete narrative flips where it's like, oh, well, Liverpool have ruined the gap. It is so reactionary whenever you look at these narratives within the footballing world. But your point does stand, though, Paul, that Arsenal have had a difficult run and, who knows what happens with the rest of the season with how they started.
Yeah. And part of it, too, is that, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I think we look at like the top 6 teams, especially the top 4 right now, and we see that that every team in this league is one injury. Oh, like look at City this year; they're one injury away from their season just being completely derailed. And I mean, it just shows that some players are completely irreplaceable if you build a system around them. So who knows what's going to happen the rest of the season? Like Saka could I can't talk. He could go down with an injury next weekend. It's possible that Salah could go down with it. You just don't know what's going to happen. So there's a reason why we play the games and why it's fun and everything, but I don't know.
I think
I'm rambling now.
Liverpool are a bit more insulated from the potential of injuries because they do have such good players who can fill in the gaps.
But if they lose Salah, they're not doing what they're doing right now.
They're not, but at that point you're just starting Gakpo on the left and then Dias on the right, and that's still a Premier League level of wingers, right?
It is, but I mean, if you look at what Salah's done this year for them, like,
I agree.
He's rescued them in probably like 7 different matches.
Yes, but I don't think they would just fall off a cliff, is what I'm saying.
I think they would.
They would manage to limp through. It would make the race a lot more interesting because Salah's out for, let's say, 3 weeks to a month. Very likely they're not in first after that long extended break there, I think. But I think we're going to pivot a little bit here at this point of the podcast, and we're going to talk about the new mystery chip that has been unveiled in FPL.
Super exciting. I'm all in. I think you are too, right, Luke?
Yes. Let's provide a quick overview for the listeners in case they do not know what it is, and then we can talk about what we think. So today the Premier League announced that the mystery chip is in fact the assistant manager chip, which allows managers to add a assistant manager into their FPL squad and you can get points from your manager based upon how their team performs.
Yeah, and so the assistant manager is an active Premier League manager.
Yes. Yep. You have 20 managers to select from. Each one will be priced accordingly based upon form, and I'm sure which team they're managing as well. The way that you get points from them, let me make sure I have this pulled up before. So the point system is if you have and
do you want me to?
And as we said, right, the manager, this is a chip that you have to activate. It lasts for 3 game weeks. You cannot use any other chips during those 3 game weeks,
which complicates the triple captain.
It complicates it a lot. But the way you get points from your managers is a team win equals 6 points, a team draw equals 3 points, and goals scored by your team equals 1 point per goal, and then a clean sheet also counts as 2 goals. If your chosen manager faces a club ranked at least 5 places higher in the Premier League table at the start of that game week, you get an extra 10 points for a win, so 16 in total for that win. And then an additional 5 points for a draw. So 8 in total if your team draws and that manager is 5 places below the team they played against in that week. Mm-hmm. So that makes it tricky, right? And this probably leads into what we think about this. One other point that I do want to make is you cannot captain your assistant manager. That is not going to be possible within the game, which I think is good because this could become very overpowered very quickly if you could captain your assistant manager.
Yeah. Another thing to add to that real quick, Luke, too, is that if your manager, let's say you have Gary O'Neill going into match week 24, and you want to play at game week 24, if he gets fired in 25, you're still going to have Wolves from 24 to 26. Yes. So you stay with the team that you're the manager of, even if they get fired. So you still get that even if they're not there.
But you can also rotate out your manager as well. If you pick them in game week 24 and you decide, let's say game week 24, you go with Slot because, and this is hypothetical, this is not who Liverpool plays in 24, but let's say Liverpool has Southampton in game week 24. You want Slot for that matchup. And then in 25, let's say you pivot to Arteta when they play Ipswich at home. You can transfer the managers in and out. You just have to use a free transfer to do that. And obviously have the money within your team to do that because each manager is going to be assigned a value from 0.5 going up to 1.5. So you just have to have the budget to get them in your team as your kind of extra 12th man.
Yeah, and so a really cool graph that the Premier League tweeted out that we can share it on our socials is they put together a list of what these managers have done so far this season. And so just for reference, I'll just read off the top 3 managers. Number 1 is Slot at Liverpool with 115 points. And then we have, let's see, I think it's Areola with 113 for Bournemouth. And then in third, we have, let's see, I think it's going to be Maresca at Chelsea and then Silva at Fulham tied at 107. So you can kind of see that there's a certain idea here that, and the reason why Bournemouth's managers are at top because they had that run of fixtures where they beat, who was it?
Man City, Liverpool.
Or they tied to Villa. They beat Arsenal and
City, and then it was also Villa.
Yes. Which you can see the upside to like kind of picking like a strong mid-table team where if they're playing teams above them, or you can play it a completely different route where you just take somebody that you believe in that's near the bottom and they're playing maybe a mid-table team that's 5 spots above them. So there's a ton of different avenues. You could get Slot too because as you can see, he just chips away at points,
Yes. Yep, exactly. I think this chip is a really good addition to the game because not only are you looking at player stats, but it forces managers to take more of a broader football-based perspective on how things happen. Because in FPL, we want clean sheets, we want goals, we want assists, we want our players being in important positions, right? But whenever we look at this chip, we're looking to see if a team is going to win or lose or draw, but also dominate the teams they're playing. So I think this creates a really interesting integration of tactical approach to fixtures and how teams are going to play against each other. And I love it. I really am excited about this. I think there's going to be some difficulties with figuring out how to use this in the best way, but I'm really excited about that. I think it creates new wrinkles to the game itself. So I love it.
I agree. And like the added element of where if you want to do this during a double game week, do you prioritize this over a triple captain or anything like that? Like, it's just going to bring on all these different debates and thought processes that managers need to go down when they're figuring all this stuff out. And honestly, I think the FPL team crushed it with this. I think this is. I think we kind of discussed the mystery chip earlier in the season and everything, and we did not toss out this idea. And this is a really good surprise, in my opinion, Luke.
I have not seen anyone speculate about this at all, frankly. And I'm sure someone out there might have. Kudos to you if you did. But it's very creative. It's not similar to anything else that's done in UCL format for fantasy or other top 5 leagues in football. So I love it. I think there could be some growing pains here and there as players, learn to use it. Maybe some people take advantage of it some way. We'll see what happens. But I really, really do like it. I think having another chip makes the game more dynamic and more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a possibility that the people who have already used their triple captaincy, they might be the ultimate winners here, right? Because planning how to use this, if you have your free hit, triple captain, your assistant manager, wild card, all those to play in the final, last half of the season, you're going to have to very much so plan out how you want to use these chips.
You have to be very detailed.
Especially because it takes up 3 game weeks to use the assistant manager. So, yeah. But I do really like it. I think it's a great addition to the game.
I agree. I'm there with you, Luke, too. How about we take a quick little break and then reconvene for the second half of the podcast where we'll kind of dive into the next 5 game weeks and kind of what we think the teams collectively will do going forward. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds great. We'll be right back.
All right. Hey everybody, welcome back to Top Bins with Twins. We're going to do a little bit of a different segment here going forward, but I think it's very relevant to FPL managers because one of the most important things you can do is kind of take stock of where these teams are at and where they are going forward. And by that, we kind of know going from there, we can pick which assets that we want to have in our teams and like who's performing and all that stuff. But one of the main things is how is this collective of players performing at this given time? So Luke had the really good idea that we would kind of grade these teams on a scale of their next 5 fixtures and kind of decide how many points we think they're going to gain, like give themselves in the table going forward. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, Luke?
No, I think you did a great job describing it. We took every team, said who they're playing, and then came up with each of our own projected points for these teams going through the next 5 fixtures.
So it'll be game week 16 through game week 20 is what we're doing.
Yes, exactly. So, Paul, I think the best place to start out is we'll work our way up from the bottom. So least points, expected points, all the way up to most expected points.
Okay.
You start us out.
Okay. At the very bottom, I have Ipswich.
Okay.
So we have their run of fixtures. They play Wolves away, Newcastle at home, Arsenal away, Chelsea at home, and Fulham away. I think they'll be lucky to get two draws out of that.
Yeah, in my mind, I have them getting 4 points. So maybe 1 win and a draw, or potentially 3-4 draws, right? I wouldn't... The way they've been conceding goals, I think it's going to have to be them nicking a game, Wolves away, or even, Newcastle at home could be one I could see them winning, right? Because they played really well against Spurs. I think they're set up better to sit deep and then break against teams. So I could see them easily doing that against Newcastle. I do think that Ipswich are going to have a difficult time the rest of the season if they continue to put across results like they did last weekend.
Yes, I agree.
They had that game in control, up 1-0, and they concede 2 late goals, and those are 3 points that they really could have used at this point in the season.
Yeah, we'll kind of discuss this more with like the bottom level teams in the Premier League right now. We saw last year with Luton how quick your season can turn, and obviously part of that on Luton was the injuries they had. They were decimated. You don't have the squad depth that other teams have that are in the mid-table or top of the table.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's the same conversation we were just having about Arsenal earlier in the podcast. The margins are just so thin in the Premier League. And if you don't capitalize on these games where you're up 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, then you don't set yourself up for success. And that's just the bottom line, you know?
Yes, completely agreed there.
Let's move forward. Do you want to say your next team, Luke?
Yeah, I think the best way to approach this is let's kind of highlight our bottom 3 teams, right? The teams that you definitely don't want to target. So you said Ipswich. Let's go through your next 2 teams at the bottom of the table, and then we'll kind of jump to mid-table, right? Okay. Where I think it'll be interesting, where we can have a bit more productive FPL conversation. So who are your other bottom 2 teams in the relegation zone based upon your projected points?
Everton and Leicester.
Okay. And why? Was it just the fixtures that did it for you, or team form? What were we kind of looking at for making that decision?
Yeah, for Everton, most of that's fixtures. I mean, they play Arsenal, Chelsea, City, Nottingham Forest, and Bournemouth away. Those are 5 really good teams. We know, honestly, the only team I would say that, I mean, City and Forest City, of course, is out of form. They lost again today to Juve. So they are very much struggling right now. They can't really figure out who they are without Rodri.
Mm-hmm.
But Nottingham Forest also to have had kind of a hiccup compared to where they were earlier in the season. But I mean, those other 3 fixtures, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Bournemouth, you're playing 3 of the best teams in the Premier League there, in my humble opinion, as of right now. So I just don't back Everton to really get much out of that. So I had them with 0 points.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. I think Everton was a team that they're at the very bottom of my list. I have them getting a 1 point over the next 5 fixtures. It's going to be a tough run for them. They have been getting the points as of late, which is good, right? It's pushing them up the table, but their upcoming run is going to be so difficult that, and a lot of those fixtures are away. And I think they're the kind of team where they're going to have their bread and butter is going to be winning at home this season.
I agree with you. And next I have Leicester. I just don't believe in Leicester. I mean, obviously they had the 2 goals against Brighton, but I mean, to me, maybe that speaks more on Brighton because Brighton just for some reason can't finish out games. Like they just always choose violence in whatever match it is. Like they show up and they're supposed to lose 5-0 and they're going to beat a team 6-1. Or they're supposed to beat somebody easily, and they give up 2 goals in the last 5 minutes.
It's
crazy.
It's the millennials these days, right? Herzler is I don't is he a millennial? He's so young. I don't know what he is at this point.
I don't think he is. I don't think he is a millennial.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. Brighton have definitely fumbled the bag a little bit. They've dropped points from winning.
They could be top of the table. Like they legitimately
could be very high up the table comparatively to where they're at, and they should be happy where they're at, right? Because a team in the table currently, I mean, they're sitting at 7th in the table, and they could easily be in 3rd or maybe even 2nd in the table if they just finished off the matches that they put in good performances with. So frustrating from a Brighton perspective, but you're still 7th in the table. So not all too bad, right? Maybe they'll find that form soon. So similarly to you, Paul, I have Leicester 3rd to last in my table, but then Southampton 2nd to last. And of course, Everton being my last team in the table.
Yeah.
I just don't see much coming from either team. Leicester's going to find goals here and there. I think they'll be a little bit better with Van Nistelrooy being their manager, but I don't see it being enough to where A, they're going to be getting a lot of points, and B, they'd be a team we'd really want to invest in for FPL.
They are scoring a little bit.
The only consideration in my mind, if you're going to go to someone that's as inconsistent as Leicester, Vardy's going to be your person. The question is he going to stay fit? There's concerns there, but I think Vardy is the one if you're looking for a Leicester asset. But with their fixtures coming up, they have Newcastle away, Wolves at home, Liverpool away, City at home, and then Aston Villa away. There's better options out there, in my opinion. So, yeah.
I agree with you. I agree. So do you want to where do you want to go with this, Luke? Do you want to stay on your table and see Do we want to skip a couple of the bottom tier options, or
what I think we're gonna do is just go to each team that we have 10th in the table. So we'll go at the midway point. Currently, based upon our projected points, I have Brighton 10th with their upcoming run of fixtures, saying that they're going to get 7 points over the next 5 game weeks. Paul has Fulham in his table sitting at 10th with 7 projected points over the next 5 game weeks. And, you know, I think based upon how we're grading these, for your pick there for Fulham, Paul, I think that's a pretty accurate pick because they have 2 really good fixtures over the next 5 game weeks. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about why you're thinking Fulham and why you put them about halfway up the table?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a decent run of fixtures for them. I fully believe in Fulham this year. That was kind of a little weird sentence, but I mean, they have FPL assets too. Like you can kind of go Jimenez, you can go Anthony Robinson for those. At Anthony Robinson, you can go ESR, you can go Iwobi. If you really want to play differential, you can bring in Wilson too. I mean, there are options in this Fulham team for FPL assets. Are they going to consistently return? Most likely not, but they are low budgets that enable you to have these higher tier players that in any given week, I mean, Iwobi has a match this week where he scored 2 goals. ESR has a goal and assist in a couple matches. Like, they will get you returns. And this Fulham team, I mean, you saw what they did against Arsenal. I mean, they only created 1 chance, but I mean, if you have Jimenez in form, that's all you really need to get 1 point out of playing one of the best teams in Europe, you know?
And the thing about Fulham, I think Iwobi is a really good option at the moment. He is joint leading the team in goals and joint leading the team in assists in the Premier League this year. That's someone who not only do they have the goal potential, but he has the assist, but he also has the underlying creating the chances, creating that XA that we're looking for. I think he's a great option, and he is super cheap too, right? So someone to keep an eye on. I do like the Fulham pick. I know you're a big ESR guy, Paul, from your Arsenal roots. Would you go Iwobi or would you go ESR?
I would go Iwobi at this point. I think he just has kind of a higher upside, but I think if you're going to have a player that just sits in your team for the whole season, I would probably pick ESR. Okay. So short-term Iwobi, long-term ESR.
Okay.
That makes sense.
No, that does make sense.
But let's talk about your Brighton pick at 10th.
Yes.
Break that down for us.
Brighton, I like their run of fixtures. They have Crystal Palace at home in game week 16. Then they go West Ham away, Brentford at home, Villa away, and then Arsenal at home. We know how that fixture went earlier in the season, but I'm projecting that Brighton gets 7 points over the next 5 game weeks. I think the plus or minus on this pick is extremely volatile. From the perspective of if Brighton go out, put in a good performance like we know they can, and they finish out the game, they could potentially have 12 to 13 points over the next 5 game weeks. And that wouldn't shock me. But I could also see them getting 6 points in the next 6 to 4 points in the next 5 game weeks because we don't really know what to expect from them. And we don't know if they're going to finish off their fixtures. So I kind of put them mid-table because that's what I expect of them. I don't know really which direction they're going to go. So as far as assets to look at, I really like João Pedro. I know he hasn't performed the last couple game weeks, but he's going to come good. If you watch them, he is their most important player, and he's at the heart of everything that they do attacking-wise. So he's going to come good. I'm going to hold him. He's so cheap, too, that I'm okay if he blinks every week here and there. Not every week, but week. Yeah, we want here, a week there.
At Top Ends with Twins, we want FPL assets that don't return.
We are playing anti-FPL.
Yeah. Yeah, but I can't wait next week whenever Palace plays. It's Palace next week, right?
Yes.
That Matoma to João Pedro assist to goal is gonna absolutely.
I forgot you have Matoma in your team.
Yeah, a little spicy. I've always been a believer in a Matoma. You know, I really enjoy him as a player.
You have been.
And he's shown more signs of life over the past 6 game weeks. You know, in FPL. So I was like, let's just spice it up a little bit and see what he can do. So we'll see that one's loading. We'll see what happens with that. But
yeah.
Do you want to hop to maybe like 5th in the table, or are there teams you want to highlight in there between the mid range?
The other team I do want to highlight that's below that stretch, I do have Spurs getting 9 points over the next 5 game weeks.
Same, we agree.
Yes, we agree on that one. And I think here's the thing: Spurs are inconsistent week in, week out. You don't know what team you're going to get, but I do think that they're going to turn a corner soon and kind of get a little bit more consistency established. They just need to have their players back. And I don't know when they're going to be back. So that's going to be highly dependent upon whether or not they're better. I still think Son is a great asset, though.
I agree.
Southampton away this week could be a massive haul for him, but I'm not going to bring him in for a 1 week punt before they do Liverpool.
The big thing with Son is just his price point.
Yeah.
That's the big question for me. Could you just go Kulusevski or Johnson and get slightly less returns? But so far this year, I mean, you would have gotten more returns if you had Johnson in your team anyways. So that's the age-old question, you know?
It is. Kulusevski's a great pick. Johnson, I'm not sure where his injury stands. I don't think Ainge has done he probably did a presser today. I did not see that because of the other fixtures going on.
I haven't seen anything.
But keep an eye on that if you do have Johnson or thinking about bringing him in, because he was taken off early against Chelsea in game week 15. So keep that in mind. Paul, are there any other teams outside of your top 5 that you wanted to discuss before we go into those?
I think Bournemouth is a team that we should discuss, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't have them in my top 5. They're below Spurs.
Well, this is a great segue because I have them 5th in my table. So you talk about them, and then I'll go into Bournemouth after that.
Yeah, I think they've been amazing this year, but I think we are going to see. I think there's something about playing these top tier teams that really suits them. But the questions are like when they play a team like Crystal Palace at home, Fulham away. So basically, the run of fixtures, they go West Ham at home, Manchester United away, Crystal Palace at home, Fulham away, Everton at home. I think sorry, my brain's everywhere. Bournemouth are probably easily a top 10 team this year in the Premier League. I think there's no questions about that. They beat some of the best teams. But I wanted to see if they can do it for 10 games in a row, 15 games. So I think that's just me asking questions about, and when they have to play in a different way rather than just sitting back, inviting pressure, and then playing that way, you know?
Yes. Yeah, I hear you on that. I think that over time, they're going to continue to rise up the table because they've shown they can handle lower table teams, but they also they set up really nicely, and it's almost better for them when they play against top teams who love to have possession, because Bournemouth are excellent at winning possession back in good positions and then breaking. And teams like City, like Spurs when they beat them, all these top teams, Arsenal, Liverpool too, they are going to fear playing Bournemouth because they know they can hurt them whenever they play them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I do think Bournemouth are a great investment opportunity. My route that I would pick, if I were just drafting a wild card this week, I would have 2 Bournemouth players in my team.
Can I guess?
Yeah, guess who I'd have?
Kirkes and what's the other?
Evan Nilsson.
Evan Nilsson?
Yes, that's exactly who I would have.
Okay.
Because Evan Nilsson, he's had so many chances this season, and he's done a pretty good job of finishing them. He has an XG of 6 or around 6 with 4 goals, so not too bad. But he's also really creative on the ball, right? He drew those pins, and he rightfully did so, right? He drew those fouls in those boxes, gets the assist points in the FPL. I think that Evan Nilsson is a great option. He's going to have a week where he gets a brace, gets a hat trick sometime over this 5 games fixture for them.
Also, Luke, real quick, I want to add something for all the FPL, like the people that are actually in FPL and decide the rules of the game that listen to this podcast. I know they listen religiously, but can we change it to where if you draw a pin and take the pin, you get more points than not getting points for both, you know? Like Cole Palmer drawing a pin and then taking the pin. I think there should be a higher incentive for him in the FPL game.
So you're saying maybe something like an extra 2 points for drawing your own pin?
Maybe. I think it should be, because I mean, you're like, essentially in FPL, the point system is to validate what somebody's actions in the game are for like significant actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, I mean, those are two distinct like significant actions to me, you know?
Yeah, no, I get that. I think that's a really interesting idea, Paul. And I'm kind of in agreement there, because it's
I mean, like,
something, because whenever you have someone draw a pin and they don't get the assist for it, but they get the goal, you have those points that are being lost, but it doesn't negate that they drew the pin in the first place as well, right? And so I really like that. That's an interesting idea there.
But not to sidetrack. Let's bounce to the next team that we want to discuss, Lucas.
You go first. Who do you have fourth in your table?
Fourth, I have Brighton. We kind of already discussed them. I want to slide to my fifth team.
Yes.
Who
okay,
is
go ahead. Yeah.
Liverpool. I have Liverpool getting 10 points over the next 5 fixtures.
Okay. That would be a good result, especially from, the perspective of the title race being spiced up. Where do you see them dropping points over the next 5? Because they have Fulham at home, they have Tottenham away, they have Leicester at home, West Ham away, and then Manchester United at home. Where do you see them dropping 5 points in that run?
I see those first two games, Fulham at home and then Tottenham away, I think going to be very tricky for Liverpool. I think Fulham can set up in a way that are really going to bother Liverpool. And then also Tottenham away. There's something about Ainge going in that matchup against Slot this year that, I don't know. We don't know really what to expect for the Spurs team. But I mean, besides the North London derby, they've been up for all the big games this year. I mean, obviously last weekend they went up 2-0, then lost 4-2 to Chelsea because they had a disaster of a second half and first half and everything. But think about it. They were in the driver's seat. They were up 2-0 in the first half of that game.
Let me play devil's advocate for 1 minute here. My concern for game week 17 when Liverpool and Tottenham play, I'm worried that Tottenham will not have their 2 first choice center backs. I think it's very possible that Van de Ven and then also Romero are not available for those fixtures, for that fixture. And that completely changes the dynamic of the team, in my opinion.
It does. They're not the same squad minus them, but I still think with their attacking prowess that they can really bother Liverpool. And we saw in the midweek this week too that Liverpool get 1 pin from Salah in the 64th minute and they survive again. But I tell you, this is the Arsenal fan in me partly, but I really just think Liverpool are a team of halves. I don't think that I've seen them consistently over they've been really good through the league so far, but they easily could have dropped points, and they've been very lucky with injuries and how games have played out for them. So I'm still a hater. I'm sorry. I'm going to be a hater until the end of the season. That's just buckle up, guys. We're here for it.
Yeah. Fasten those seatbelts because Paul is on the hate train.
Also, sorry, Kyle, not to sidetrack the pod at all, but I am loving this for City right now. But keep going. Luke's crying in the corner right now.
There's no crying in the club, Paul. What are you talking about? My opinion on Liverpool is yes. I think they've been, I've talked about it before on the pod. I think they've been fortunate. They've been relatively healthy. I think they've had injuries, right? Konate's out. They've had Trent be out for a while. They've had Jota, who's their starting striker, out. They've had their fair share of injuries. They just haven't had that crucial one to Virgil van Dijk or Salah. If one of those two goes down, I think they could be hurting, right? Liverpool are going to continue to win games, in my opinion. I have them sitting at 13 projected points over the next 5 game weeks, drawing 1 fixture, winning the other 4. And I have them top of my table over the next 13 with the run that they have. I just think that I see Liverpool continuing to chip away.
Are you actually a Liverpool fan? We don't know what we don't know what hat he's going to wear on the pod. We never know.
I'm not. Let's go over though to the next team that I have in my table. And actually, no, here's what I think is the best thing for us to do. We've already talked about Brighton. They're 4th in Paul's table. Paul and I have the exact same 2nd and 3rd team in our tables in the same order. Paul and I both have Arsenal 2nd and then Chelsea 3rd. Let's talk about these 2 teams And then we can talk about the last team that I have, because the fourth team in my table, because they're first in yours. So let's talk about Chelsea and then Arsenal. So I'll kick it off with Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this run that Chelsea have had, going back almost 3 or 4 game weeks now, is one of the best runs that a team will have from an FPL perspective that we will ever see, right? Because it just lines up perfectly to load your team up with Chelsea players, and God forbid rotation strikes, but Brentford at home in game week 16, Everton away, Fulham at home, Ipswich away, Crystal Palace away. Over the next 5 just screams Chelsea getting a lot of points over these next fixtures. And so I have them on 12 points. I really think that it's feasible that they maybe lose one, perhaps Fulham at home, but then they win the other 4. So I fully on Chelsea being a great team to invest in, even now after they've had great fixtures. But get those guys in your team, because they're going to continue to chip away at the points, even if they're not necessarily winning every match they play.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's basically impossible to play FPL without Cole Palmer in your team right now.
Yeah, it truly is. And Salah's the same way.
It's insane. Those two are just like basically pillars of your team, and it's going to be so interesting to me whenever the big Norwegian dude comes back and is scoring goals again, because it's going to be very complicated to get all of them in the same team.
It will be. And we do know that at some point in the season, City are going to right the ship. Pep's going to figure it out. The players are going to find form again. Maybe they just need a goal to go in, right? And that it could be something as simple as that. So they're playing a tough fixture. Let's say they had, Villa away in game week 17. Jamie goal goes in, and then they're up 3-0 by half, right? And so the beast can awaken, but I do think that Chelsea, going back to that real fast to wrap up this point, Chelsea are a great option to have. And we can see, like, Paul, this is a great question to ask you. Do you think Enzo is a legit FPL option at the moment?
I mean, yes and no. He's getting the returns. His price point is amazing for what he is. But I just don't buy it. To me, I mean, I feel like he's turning up in moments, finding goals that I don't believe in him producing throughout the rest of the season, if that makes sense.
Okay, I hear you on that. And I think the important thing here, I'm sorry, I'm trying to find his price. So he's currently at £5 million. He has risen a couple times, because I think he was down to 4.8 at one point.
Mm-hmm.
The difference in Enzo, as opposed to what he was previously, is he's taking up a different position tactically. He's playing in almost a dual 10 role alongside Palmer. Instead of playing in the right inner channel, which Palmer is, Enzo's playing in that left inner channel. And he's in the mixer there, where he is really in good positions to convert opportunities. And he's surrounded by some really creative players too, right? So I think the chances are going to continue to fall to him. The question is, does he continue to put them away? That's what I'm not entirely sure about.
Yeah,
I do think he's going to continue to play in that position that he has been, because he's been doing well. I think he's an option for $5 million, and you could potentially get someone who has, over the last 4 game weeks, he has 9 points, 5 points, 9 points, 12 points.
He's ticking away.
It's ticking away at the points.
Which is great. We love that as FPL managers. We do.
With the runs that they have coming up, I really could predict him, continuing to give returns to those managers. So that will probably... Do we want to go to Arsenal real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talk about Arsenal on this pod, but I think when it comes down to it, having an Arsenal defender, maybe 2 Arsenal defenders, and Saka, I think, is one of those players too that's in the discussion of almost being mandatory for FPL at this point right now. Like, he's on those corners, he's always creating chances like that, and you know that there's the way Arsenal are playing this year. If he's on corners, he could get 3 assists from corners this season in any match, and then you throw in the factor that he's on pins, that he is insane. Like, he's so dangerous when he cuts in from that right half space. I don't know. And Arsenal seem like they're better. They scored 3 goals today in Champions League in midweek against Monaco. So I mean, we'll see. I think Saka is somebody that really needs to be in FPL teams, but it's just like I said, it's so difficult with the way the game was set up this year to find money to get all those premiums in. So it just depends on where you place value. But I think Arsenal, they play Everton at home, Crystal Palace away, Ipswich at home, Brentford away, Brighton away. I have them down for 13 points out of that run. I think it could be more. I think they could go 5 for 5.
It wouldn't shock me. It would not surprise me if they did. The trickier fixtures, I think Crystal Palace away, that is a bit tricky. Selhurst Park is a tough place to play. I struggle with that
matchup sometimes.
And I think Brentford away. Brentford are different bees altogether at home.
God, I was not a fan of that.
Sorry, it was there in front of me.
Just buzzing up the wrong tree. Luke.
And then they also have Brighton away. Sorry, Brentford on the mind.
Brighton away is tough.
They have Brighton away, so there are some tough fixtures in there. If they play to the best of their ability, they will get 15 points out of those 5 fixtures.
Yes, I agree.
But okay,
let's talk about our number ones.
I want to go. Let's talk about your number 1, my number 4. I have Man City as number 4 on my list. They have Manchester United at home, Villa away, Everton at home, Leicester away, and then West Ham at home. So starting off in Game Week 18, they have a really, really good run of excellent fixtures to come. The question here, and this is probably somewhere that what you're thinking as well, Paul, with Man City, how do we invest in Man City? Because if, as a lot of us are, if you're tripled up on Palmer, Saka, and then you also have Salah as well, how do you get to Holland?
I'm not an accountant. I'm not great with numbers, but it's very difficult.
We need Kyle.
This is where we call in Kyle. But it's tough. I mean, I think there are other options. Like if I'm looking at City's attack, I'm probably going Doku if I have to pick anybody else besides Holland.
Doku? Really? Okay, interesting. Why do you say that? Do you feel like he's locked in the starting 11?
I have not watched enough of City to say if he is. I honestly sometimes guys I just bring vibes in this podcast and that's the simple truth. Okay, but if I had to go with anybody, I would go with Doku.
It's a gut feeling. Okay. Yeah.
And go ahead. Go ahead. You talk.
No, I think it's great, right? Like pure vibes, Doku's the guy to go to, right? But
I'm pulling up FootMob right now.
whenever I look at City, I see a team that, as I was saying earlier, they need a couple games to go their way, and then they could go on that run that we usually see them start around this time of the year. I wouldn't be shocked if they, as Paul has predicted in his table, if they win 5 of their next 5 fixtures. That would not shock me with the teams they're playing. And they're starting to get a bit healthier in attacking positions. Defensively, they're still pretty weak.
But so the caveat for Doku is that
here it comes.
If I can look at a team and see that their left back is 30 and above, he should be triple captained.
Oh my God. Okay.
Let me tell you this is a real thing. This is a real thing. If Doku plays a center back, right back, that I can't even take myself seriously right now. But if they are above 30, you know he's gonna get a hat trick. But if they're below 30, man's not doing anything.
Here's the thing: it's because Doku is all gas, no brakes. Right? He's going at you. He's
start and stop.
He is. Oh wow, he's fun to watch. But in product, maybe a little lacking. What I'm getting at here with City is that Foden is in and out of the team. We don't know which wingers are necessarily going to start. Bernardo Silva is probably going to start, but he's never really around the goals consistently enough to go there.
Also, do you know, sorry to interrupt you again, but do you know who is their second leading goal scorer right now?
I would guess Gvardiol.
He is. You're so smart.
Yeah. So that's a great segue into my point. I think Gvardiol is the second best option at City, and I think KDB is the best one. If you're going to invest in them right now, it has the makings of a team that could reel off games. And as KDB continues to build fitness and also just get his body back to where it's really in prime game time shape, I think he's going to progressively become a better asset. So, potentially someone I'm looking at bringing in sometime soon because I love the fixtures. I know I want a piece of the City attack. And as we've seen, this team really struggles week in and week out at this point. But not having KDB, they lack a cohesion that is very evident when you watch them. So that City is fourth in my table, but they are first in Paul's. So we'll see how this comes out. But I am very interested to be getting a City player in my team soon. And I'm not going to tear up my team to get Haaland back into it.
And so the interesting thing too about City is that in this next run of fixtures, Rico Lewis will be out for the United game because he got 2 yellows in their last match. So it begs the question, who the fuck are they going to start in the midfield? And sorry to use explicits there, but like, I mean, if you think
here's what I think. Okay, so Foden's back in training. I think he might have subbed on a little bit today against Juventus. I'm not sure.
I have it right here.
But what I think they do is they probably drop Nunez down to a midfield role. He'll play alongside Gundo, and then you play with Savio and Doku on the wings.
Foden did not sub in today.
Okay, so he's still kind of regaining fitness from his bronchitis.
Kovacic was on the bench too, so
well, there you go. Kovacic could probably play in the Manchester derby. That would not surprise me at all. They probably rested him for that, so they want him to be fully fit. So, yeah, keep your eye on City because there's going to come a time where, regardless what team you support, you're probably going to want some City assets in there, and you don't want to miss out on those points because they can really explode on any game week.
Yeah, I think it's easily possible, but I think that about does it for me, Luke. I'm getting hangry.
Uh-oh, can't have that.
And we don't want that. Nobody loves that. But do you have any closing thoughts about what we just discussed? Anything you want to put a bow on?
Not really. I think we did a great job of kind of going through our list, and hopefully that helped everyone inform their decision-making process going into Game Week 16 because there's a lot of football coming up. It's gonna fly by. We're gonna get to January and be like, wow, what just happened?
Yeah, it happens every year.
Make sure you're paying attention to when the deadlines are and really prioritize rolling transfers if you can, because you're gonna want to use free transfers if possible, as injuries come up and possible rotation strikes as well. So any final thoughts from you, Paul?
Yeah, let's really sit down and plan out what we're going to do with our chips in the second half of the season. Because, and honestly, I'm not saying this to anybody else because everybody can play their own game. I'm really just saying this to myself because I know how I was last year with all the chips I used. And I had like 3 chips to use in the last 3 game weeks. And yeah, that's just not productive, especially whenever your rank is falling to 3 million and you're like, why the fuck do I play this game?
We're going to play this back to you in Game Week 35 when you still have all your chips available.
Like, no, I'm gonna raise my rank 2 million. No.
Which is, I did that last year. Fair enough, yeah. Right? Like I went from about 2 million, almost like 6 or 7 game weeks out from 38. And I ended up in the top 100K. So
a great run.
You just have to strategically play them. But yes, agreed, Paul. Let's plan out those chips.
Plan the chips and just say tapped into the top ends of Twins because we're gonna have all your information through the festive season. You know? So
exactly. Great
advice. Ask us questions. Connect with us. We're here for it all. We do this podcast for a reason. It's because we love to talk about FPL. We love to be around the Premier League. So any discourse that you want to have, feel free to reach out to us because we would love it.
Yes. Thank you all for joining this week's episode of Top Bins with Twins. We will be back with you all next week to talk about Game Week 16 and get you ready for Game Week 17. So have a good rest of your day, and thanks for joining us.
See you next week, guys.